그게 가장 극복하기 힘들었던 것 같고요. 제가 다리가 다른 친구들보다 조금 두껍다고 해서 제 다리를 조금 싫어했었는데 근데 이제 로잔에 갔다 오고 나서 오히려 제 다리에서 나오는 파워풀한 힘이 좋았다고 해주시는 분들도 있다는 걸 느껴가지고 그 두 개가 가장 극복하기도 힘들었고 기억에 남는 것 같아요. 프릭스티 로잔이라는 콩쿨 자체가 학생들 사이에서는 가장 크고 의미 있는 콩쿨이다 보니 제가 그 로잔 영상을 보면서 자라왔기 때문에 그 무대에 서서 제가 춤을 췄다는 것 자체가 엄청 인상 깊었던 것 같아요. 제가 걸어왔던 길, 이게 맞는 방법일까? 근데 그런 의구심을 다 없앨 수 있게 제가 가는 길이 맞았다라는 거를 확인시켜줬던 것 같아요. 그래서 그런 감정이 들어서 조금 감격스러웠던 것 같아요. 한 배역에만 잘 할 수 있는 명수가 아니라 어떠한 배역을 받아도 다 넣어서 소화해낼 수 있는 그런 스펙트럼이 넓은 명수가 되고 싶습니다.
From breaking news in South Korea to stories from around the world, we're here to bring you the news that matters.
Truth, clarity, and impartiality. And that's what we uphold in a fast-changing world.
We go beyond the headlines, offering depth, context, and perspective.
This isn't just news, it's our commitment. News you trust. Arirang News. Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the Status UN summit. A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
Ahead of his visits to Japan and the U.S. starting this weekend, President Lee Jae-myung says he'll place national interests first in pursuing mutually beneficial diplomacy and security policies. And President Lee says scrapping past deals with Japan on wartime issues will be, quote, undesirable, while reaffirming his commitment to a future-oriented partnership with Tokyo. The founder of Microsoft and now chairman of the Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, is here in Seoul, voicing hopes of collaboration in South Korea on areas including global health, AI, and nuclear power technology. President Lee Jae-myung is just 2 days away from embarking on his trips to Japan and the U.S. And today, the president's office outlined his schedule. Our correspondent Song Yu-jin begins our coverage tonight.
Ahead of his upcoming visits to Japan and the United States, this is what President Lee Jae-myung told his top aides on Thursday.
현재 국제 정세와 또 무역 질서가 재편되는 중에 풀어야 할 현안들이 너무 많습니다. 국가 이익을 최우선에 두고 호혜적인 외교 안보 정책이 실현될 수 있도록 최선을 다하겠습니다.
The president's remarks came after the presidential office released more details of his trips. President Lee and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung will first depart for Tokyo on Saturday morning. Upon arrival, the first appointment is a luncheon with members of the Korean community in Japan, followed by a summit with Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in the afternoon and an official dinner.
Through the summit, the leaders of South Korea and Japan will strengthen the foundations for future-oriented cooperation, enhance trilateral coordination with the U.S., and hold candid discussions on regional and global issues, including peace and stability in the region.
Then on Sunday, President Lee will meet with members of Japan's parliament before heading to Washington, D.C. He's expected to arrive in the American capital that afternoon and begin a 3-day stay by having dinner with Korean residents in the U.S. The big day will be Monday when he will have his first face-to-face meeting with President Donald Trump at the White House.
The two leaders will discuss ways to advance peace and denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. They are also expected to deepen economic cooperation based on the recent trade agreement, particularly in semiconductors, batteries, and shipbuilding.
The president is also scheduled to meet figures from business and academic circles. Finally, on Tuesday, President Lee will travel to Philadelphia to tour a shipyard recently acquired by Korea's Hanwha Group. The yard is seen as a symbolic venue for Seoul and Washington's shipbuilding cooperation. The Air Force One jet will take off from the U.S. on Tuesday evening and return to Korea early Thursday. So the presidential office says National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak will provide more specifics on these back-to-back trips, as well as the agenda for each summit on Friday. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
And President Lee had an interview with a Japanese news outlet ahead of his talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba this weekend, during which he dismissed the idea of scrapping past deals with Japan on thorny wartime issues. Our senior Presidential Office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Overturning past agreements with Japan undesirable. That was according to President Lee Jae-myung in an interview with Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun, released on Thursday, referring to past agreements on wartime issues of Korean sex slaves and forced laborers. Lee says though the deals finalized under previous conservative governments are difficult to accept, they are commitments made between nations. At the same time, he noted the feelings of the Korean people should be taken into account, adding that what's more important is offering words of consolation in a sincere manner. In 2015, the so-called Comfort Women Agreement was reached under the Park Geun-hye administration, and in 2023, the third-party compensation scheme for wartime laborers was agreed under the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Those agreements sparked some backlash in Korea. Calling Japan very important, Lee also stressed the importance of the Seoul-Tokyo relationship ahead of his talks with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba this weekend in Tokyo, hoping to expand cooperation on the economy, society, and culture. The liberal-leaning leader highly appreciated the Kim Dae-jung-Obuchi Declaration, signed in 1998, to chart a new path for a future-oriented partnership, based upon which he expressed hopes to announce a new joint declaration that goes beyond.
I think we can expect something. A final coordination is needed, so it's hard to tell at the moment.
Cooperation with Japan, as well as trilateral cooperation with the U.S., is crucial in more than one way: North Korea. President Lee did mention the North Korea nuclear issue, outlining a three-stage roadmap for the first time that involves freezing, reducing, and dismantling the North nuclear and missile programs. He added that this will be pursued while maintaining a close coordination with the U.S. and pursuing active inter-Korean dialogue. He also pitched multilateral cooperation involving the U.S., Russia, the two Koreas, and Japan on the Arctic Shipping Road project. On China, President Lee said there are aspects of competition and cooperation when it comes to the bilateral relationship, adding it should be managed, taking into account various aspects. When the South Korean leader wraps up his talks with Ishiba this weekend in Tokyo, he'll be flying straight to Washington for his first summit with U.S. President Donald Trump. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The founder of Microsoft and now chairman of the Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, is in town to discuss solutions for humanity through nuclear energy and innovative tech in collaboration with South Korea. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
Seeking windows to resolve growing challenges faced by humanity. Nuclear power and bioinnovation topped the discussion between President Lee Jae-myung and tech mogul turned philanthropist Bill Gates. On Thursday, the founder of Microsoft and now chairman of the Gates Foundation paid a visit to the presidential office in Seoul. President Lee commended Gates for his contributions to the world through the Windows operating system, as well as global health and development.
지구와 지구인 전체를 위한 그런 공공적 활동에 대해서 경의를 표하고 우리 대한민국 정부도 함께할 방법을 최대한 찾아보겠습니다.
Gates, meanwhile, noted South Korea's transition from a recipient to a donor of foreign aid, highlighting its role and innovation in advancing global development, such as in tackling child mortality through Korea's bioscience products.
The world has changed a lot, whether it's the geopolitics or the technology of AI. And so you have a huge opportunity to re-examine some of the key strategies and really reinforce the strong role that South Korea plays in solving many of these problems.
He added that while the evolution of artificial intelligence and science brings development and progress, such changes also raise concerns. He pointed to rising healthcare costs in low-income countries, stressing that multinational support is critical. Gates later said at a separate event there could also be partnerships between health agencies and North Korea as a low-income country in the fields of vaccines too, but noted Pyongyang has decided against such cooperation. Addressing the growing demand for power in advanced industries such as AI and semiconductors, Gates suggested small module reactors could be an effective solution. President Lee expressed Korea's interest in constructing next-generation nuclear power plants. He said many local firms have been developing small reactors, and their presence in the global market is steadily increasing. Korea's second-largest conglomerate, SK, has invested $250 million into TerraPower, an SMR firm founded by Gates. TerraPower is also partnering with the Korean government to develop a global supply chain for advanced nuclear technologies. Visiting Korea for the first time in 3 years, Gates on Thursday also met with local press and politicians at the National Assembly. He said the Gates Foundation is planning to open an office in Korea, citing his frequent interactions with the country's authorities and businesses. He added he always enjoys coming to Korea and hopes to visit every 2 or 3 years. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Netflix hit K-pop Demon Hunters isn't just topping global charts. It's fueling a surge of interest in Korean food, culture, and even tourism. And Korean companies are rushing to seize the moment, while President Lee Jae-myung is pledging stronger support for the culture industry. For more, we have our Kim Do-yeon here in the studio with us. Welcome back, Do-yeon.
Good to be here.
So, Do-yeon, let's start with Huntrix members' favorite snacks. I hear they have the characters on them in real life. Tell us more.
That's right, Dami. On Wednesday, Nongshim announced it will launch limited edition versions of shinramyeon and shrimp crackers, among others. The exact snacks enjoyed by Huntrix members in the film. Fans had already been associating the products with the show, and it was rather clear in the movie which real-life items the animation had included. Some fans even made their own labels to mimic the packaging. Now, Nongshim is making it official, teaming up with Netflix to roll out the items across Korea, the US, Europe, and Southeast Asia. I spoke to an official from the company earlier. Take a listen.
Just as K-pop Demon Hunters has introduced K-culture to the world, Nongshim will use this collaboration to genuinely share the taste and value of K-ramyeon and K-snacks with global consumers.
Now, there is actual evidence that people are now more interested in Korean food after the movie was released. And I'm sure the Korean companies are, trying to really seize that moment. Perfect timing for the companies other than Nongshim, right?
That's right. First off, as I said, Nongshim said collaboration was possible because the movie's fans were already making labels on their own to cover the items on the shelf to make it seem like the ones from the K-pop Demon Hunters. Now, merchandise is just a big part of K-pop in general. And so it's natural for merch from the movie to be selling well. Now, take a listen to this critic from yesterday's Arirang special.
It's not just about saying Huntrix is pretty. Fans ask, what are they holding? What are they wearing? What are they singing? If a song is out there, fans will try to cover it. That whole culture of imitation and participation has been built up through K-pop, and now the film is amplifying it.
All in all, it's the perfect time for Korea to jump on this as well. Like you said, there's evidence. According to Google Trends, searches for Korea worldwide surged to their highest level in nearly 3 years during the week of July 17th to 23rd. Interest even surpassed the spike seen last December when then-President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law. Now, since the release of K-pop Demon Hunters on June 20th, global searches for Korea have nearly doubled. Searches for Korean food also jumped to an all-time high, up 75% following the show's debut. And the government says it's not going to miss this chance.
Right, because also joining the special program yesterday was President Lee Jae-myung and also director of the K-pop Demon Hunters, Maggie Kang. The government is more committed than ever to support that industry, isn't it?
Right. President Lee has shown interest in fostering the culture industry. It's only natural because the industry itself is already doing well.
Right.
But take a listen to what he had to say yesterday.
겉으로는 화려해 보이지만 토대가 과연 튼튼하냐? 사실 속이 좀 비어 있지 않냐? 뿌리가 좀 썩어가지 않냐? 라는 지적을 하는데 공감하거든요. 튼튼한 뿌리를 만드는 역할을 우리 정부가 할 텐데 지금부터 시작이다.
Now, earlier this year, at the beginning of E's term, the Lee administration pledged to build a top 5 cultural power. The government is expected to inject 51 trillion won, or around $37 billion over the next 5 years to do that.
Then tell us, what can the government do more to make more improvements in the industry that are actually needed?
Right, and there is something that we can see from the example of KPop Demon Hunters. Now, despite the Netflix film's global success, the estimated 1 trillion won, or roughly $750 million intellectual property value of KPop Demon Hunters will flow to the US platform, Netflix, and Japan's Sony Pictures. None of the world's top 50 IP holders are Korean firms, according to a recent study by the Korea Chamber of Commerce. By contrast, the US dominates with 32, followed by Japan with 7, and China and France with 2 each. The economic stakes are massive. Disney alone generated about $62 billion last year through IP-based businesses like Mickey Mouse and Marvel. Collectively, America's top IP companies earn revenues equivalent to around 13% of Korea's entire GDP. For Korea still heavily dependent on manufacturing exports, such figures highlighted why building a homegrown super IP may be crucial to future growth.
Indeed, Doyeon, thank you so much for the interesting coverage tonight.
Thank you for having me.
The ruling party at the National Assembly today passed one of its media reform bills. It then introduced a final bill in the package, prompting the main opposition party to launch a filibuster. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young has the details.
The second of 3 media reform bills aimed at reshaping the governance of public broadcasters has passed the National Assembly. The ruling Democratic Party on Thursday unilaterally pushed through an amendment to the Foundation for Broadcast Culture Act to reduce government influence over public broadcasters by increasing the foundation's board from 9 to 13 members. The foundation is the main shareholder of public broadcaster MBC. Of the 171 votes cast, 169 were in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstained amid a boycott by the main opposition People Power Party. The bill passed the Assembly last year but was then vetoed by the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. It was introduced again by the DP during a plenary session earlier this month but was not voted on as the July extraordinary session came to a close following a PPP filibuster. Following Thursday's vote, the DP brought forward a final media reform bill targeting EBS, again triggering a filibuster by the PPP.
The bill aims to ensure the educational broadcasting system's independence and political neutrality by expanding its board to include experts and representatives from various fields, and by improving transparency in selecting its president.
If we hand over the management and operation of public broadcasting, resources entrusted to us by the people, to those with no mandate, it would betray the trust of the people who gave us authority through representative democracy.
Under the National Assembly Act, a filibuster on each bill can be halted after 24 hours if at least 3/5 of the parliament agrees to do so. The final media reform bill is expected to be put to a vote immediately after the filibuster ends. However, no new legislation will be taken up on Friday as the rival parties agreed not to handle bills on the day of the PPP convention and instead add another session next Monday. The DP had initially planned to hold plenary sessions from Thursday to Sunday to push ahead with contentious bills left unresolved during the July extraordinary session. Next in line are the so-called Yellow Envelope Bill, an amendment to labor union laws, and a revision to the Commercial Act, with the PPP also planning to launch further filibusters, arguing the bills are being pushed forward without bipartisan agreement. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Foreigners will no longer be able to buy homes in South Korea's capital region unless for actual residents. On Thursday, the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced that foreign individuals, corporations and governments must now get prior approval from local authorities to purchase property in newly designated zones. Now, this covers all of Seoul, most of Gyeonggi-do province and parts of Incheon. The move follows concerns that foreign buyers have been inflating housing prices by bringing in overseas funds without being subject to local regulations. The U.S. Federal Reserve's Jackson Hole Symposium kicks off this Thursday with much attention on Chairman Jerome Powell's keynote speech on Friday. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young has more.
Central bankers from around the world are convening in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for the Federal Reserve's annual conference. All eyes are on Fed Chair Jerome Powell, slated to deliver a speech on Friday morning local time. His address comes amidst political pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump, who continues to push for interest rate cuts. Market expectations are divided on what Chairman Powell will signal. This is due to the conflicting signals emanating from the crucial economic indicators, employment and inflation data. Employment indicators have begun to show signs of stress. U.S. employment growth in July proved weaker than anticipated. U.S. non-farm payrolls increased by 73,000 jobs in July, following a downwardly revised 14,000 increase in June, the fewest gains in nearly 5 years. Weakening employment data suggests a potential economic downturn, increasing the impetus for rate cuts.
We do expect the Federal Reserve to favor that side of the mandate. So, focusing more on the employment side versus the inflation side. And if we do see incremental weakening in labor market conditions in the upcoming weeks, I think Chair Powell wants to give himself a route to start to resume those interest rate cuts if that's indeed what happens with the data looking forward.
Conversely, the inflation picture remains unstable. The U.S. Producer Price Index for July surged by 0.9%, exceeding the forecasted 0.2% increase and the largest monthly increase since June 2022. This inflationary pressure hinders prospects for rate cuts. Meanwhile, minutes from the Fed's July session indicate that most policymakers largely agreed on maintaining the interest rate at 4.25% to 4.5%, primarily citing heightened inflation risks stemming from President Trump's tariff policies. Notably, however, 2 members of the Fed committee dissented from this status quo, voting instead for a 25 basis point rate cut at the last policy meeting on July 29th and 30th. This marks the first time since 1993 that more than one Fed governor has voted against a rate decision. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
With the scorching heat, the heatwave warnings were strengthened today. Heatwave warnings were added in Yongin in Gyeonggi-do province, Hwaengsong in Gangwon-do province, and Gunsan in Jeollabuk-do province this morning. Today, the daytime temperature in Seoul rose to 32 degrees Celsius, and in Samcheok and Kimcheon, it reached 36 degrees. The summer heat is supposed to cool down for the season of Choseol, which means welcoming the autumn on the traditional calendar. However, the heat seems to be getting stronger and stronger. The daytime temperature in Seoul will rise to 33 degrees on Saturday, and heat waves and tropical nights are expected to continue until next week. Tomorrow morning temperatures will start at around 25 degrees across the country. Daily highs will up to 32 degrees in Seoul, Daegu 35 degrees. Until this weekend, rain clouds will often cover the skies. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
Time to set the facts straight. Get Korea right. K-culture is sweeping the globe. K-pop, K-drama, K-movie, K-food, and even K-beauty. Korean cultural content is gaining more and more fans worldwide. It's indeed the golden age of K-culture. But with this growing interest comes an increase in misinformation about Korea. There's so much inaccurate information out there. Even AI can sometimes get it wrong. So, we must set things straight and correct all the misinformation. So here's the plan. The Voluntary Agency Network of Korea, VANK, and Arirang TV present the Get Korea Right project. Our goal is to provide accurate information on important keywords that come to mind when we think of Korea. Blatant errors and false claims that distort history. It's time to set the record straight, sharing the true history and culture of Korea while raising the national brand. Let's get started with Get Korea Right. Are you ready to join?
Arirang TV is conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV website www.arirang.com or mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발. 신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. With President Lee Jae-myung set to hold back-to-back summits with the U.S. and Japan, this week is shaping up to be a critical turning point in Korea's economic diplomacy. And at the center of it all, tariff negotiations, a multi-billion-dollar investment fund, and growing pressure from Washington for Seoul to take on more strategic burdens. On Japan's front, optimism over renewed shuttle diplomacy is being tempered by unresolved historical disputes and political instability within Tokyo. All of this unfolds as business leaders join the president abroad with Korea's trade, tech, and investment agenda under close watch. To explore more on this, we invite Sung-Soo Eric Kim, founder and CEO of Data Crunch Global and adjunct professor at Yonsei Graduate School of Business. A big welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
And also joining us is Han-Hyung Lee, assistant professor of economics at Montclair State University. Good to see you, Professor.
Thanks for having me on again.
So let's start our discussion right away with Professor Kim. So with the South Korea-U.S. summit approaching, the presidential office is still working to finalize the detailed agenda. What are your expectations for the core economic topics to be addressed?
So I think this summit is really important. Minister of Foreign Affairs Cho Hyun just flew to U.S. Amid facing a Korea-Japan summit on the 23rd. So he's not attending the Korea-Japan summit and went to U.S. to discuss about the Korea-U.S. summit. So that signals that there are very, very important issues going on right now between Korea and U.S. And that also symbolizes how much this summit is very important for Korea in terms of negotiating and finalizing the deals with the United States. The previous agreement, which was made just last month, this month, was MASCA, making America ship business great again. So in that stance, our president is visiting Philadelphia, which Hanwha acquired a Philadelphia shipmaking company. So that will be symbolic to the Korea-U.S. cooperation this time. We have a lot of discussions that should be made at corporate level and also at national level for U.S.-Korea cooperation this time.
Right. So with Seoul's foreign minister visiting the U.S. today, it seems a lot of important topics are yet to be discussed in the summit. Now, President Lee Jae-myung is traveling to the U.S. with a high-profile business delegation as the tariff deal enters its final stage. He also called for a one-team mindset during his meeting with Korean corporate leaders. Professor Lee, how crucial is the role of these companies in this latest visit?
Well, it's quite crucial as to the fact that these high-profile officials and as well as the leaders are coming into the United States together with President Lee. It is clear from President Trump's perspective that the United States wants to bring back manufacturing to the country, and the role of the foreign companies such as Samsung and Hyundai in these investment projects is going to be quite crucial, especially in the fact that foreign companies like Samsung and Hyundai are going to bring more investment back to Republican-strong states, and the fact that they can bring more manufacturing jobs, it's going to be probably the most important leverage that Korea has over the United States, and also the United States wants that, and so it's going to be the crucial deal in terms of this summit. Now, when it comes to the idea behind this one team mindset, while it is crucial for that the companies and the South Korean government have both the same alignment in terms of what they are going to bring to the table, I think that it also means that the Korean government has to give Korean firms unilateral support given the one team mindset. It means regulatory predictions and how they're going to navigate through the challenging times and uncertain eras.
Right, so it definitely seems to signal alignment between the government and businesses at this point. Now, during the meeting with business leaders, several top CEOs from Samsung to Celltrion has emphasized job creation, startup investment, and high-value industries there. Professor Kim, what are the chances for these corporate promises to turn into actual tangible outcomes in the American market?
So I think that it should be materialized because this is very important. Summit, and the reason why we're bringing all of our business leaders is that we want a concrete, tangible outcome out of this. If you look at the other side of the current, struggle between the United States and Korea, where the tariffs and U.S. Demanding Korea for more active investment and more active role in the Korea-U.S. economic cooperation, we can look at it as an opportunity to enter the U.S. market. So U.S. is opening up the market for us to invest and to build the future together. So we can also ask for deregulation in these situations for a more smoother landing into the U.S. market. So we should see a lot of mutual agreements here in terms of the investment package that we will deliver to U.S., but also at the same time, we need assurance of deregulation and a business-friendly environment in the United States for the Korean companies to excel in the U.S. business environments. So these initiatives are not a bilateral, initiative. It should be a unilateral initiatives, which we have to find a win-win situation, which we will ask for deregulation.
Right. So the execution of these promises through dialogue with Washington would be very important moving forward. Now, following the latest tariff deal with Washington, we are looking ahead to the $350 billion investment fund, which is still kind of under negotiation. Professor Lee, what should Korean companies be demanding in return to ensure this initiative doesn't become a one-sided political trophy?
Well, first of all, it is unclear who the Korean firms can go to for these demands. Suppose that Korean firms go to the South Korean government, and it's unclear whether or not the South Korean government is able to have a more negotiation power against the, let's say, the United States counterpart. I think what's important here is that these firms, especially the firms that are investing a large portion of their capital assets and capital expenditures for over the next few years, they want to guarantee that there's going to be a certainty of support. And that could be a regulatory or there could be a tax provision code where for the next 5 or 6 or 7 years down the road, they're able to receive those benefits as promised. Keep in mind that these investment pledges and commitments are going to be actually realized in maybe in 2033 or 2034. So that's a few years down the road. So there's going to be some changes in administrations in the United States and also in Korea, but the companies will be faced with the same constraints, the commitment they made this year. So for them, there has to be some kind of seamless transition between their investment commitments and actual realization in the states of the United States that include state-level cooperations as well as federal-level initiatives such as seamless work visa permits and a lot of facilitations of the workers moving from Korea to the United States, as they can also take some time. At the end of the day, what's really important is the policy certainty and guidance from both governments.
Right, so a lot of complex variables to consider, and Korean firm must be able to weigh in both long and short-term leverages. Now that the U.S. has implemented steep new tariffs on 407 steel and aluminum derivative products, Professor Kim, what are the main challenges Korean exporters would face, and what kind of short-term and long-term strategies could be helpful?
So this has been an ongoing problem, and the main reason is because of the overproduction of Chinese steel companies, so that the global steel prices pretty much, low. Like other countries cannot compete with Chinese steel manufacturers. So that's the reason why the U.S. is trying to control the market. They already have a quota against Korean steel companies, so this issue has been going on for some time. But now, this time, they're also, will put regulations and new tariffs on the derivatives of steel and aluminum products, which means that the aluminum and steel products that are used for automobiles and white goods, such as refrigerators, are also going to be targeted. The estimate is that our exports of these derivatives are about $11.9 billion annually. So it's going to hit our economy pretty hard if these tariffs are imposed. So this also has to be addressed as a packaged conversation during the summit of how to deregulate the regulatory stances of the United States so that our companies can more actively participate and invest in the U.S. market. So that will be the immediate discussion that should proceed. And in a long-term discussion, we will also have to discuss of how to co-manage these kind of supply chain issues with the United States as an economic partner.
Right. So focusing on deregulation and co-balancing supply chain regulations would be very helpful. Now, Korea was notably excluded from tariff exemptions that the U.S. granted to Japan and the EU in this latest fund. Professor Lee, what exemptions are we talking about? Could you explain for us? And why is Korea falling behind in these negotiations and exemptions?
I believe you're referring to the tariff stacking, which means that it's going to be a tariff rate, which is 15% unilaterally across the Japan, Korea, and EU, and that's going to be stacked on top of the existing tariff. For example, if a product was receiving a 10% tariff, but now with this 15% rule, I think there's going to be 10 plus 15, which is a total of 25% tariff. But there was some misunderstanding, especially from the announcement from the White House, and a trade negotiator from Japan had to visit the United States again a few weeks ago, and they have to sort that out. And eventually they worked out this plan where it's going to be 15% tariff rate across all products, and also the same case for the EU. And now, I don't think that Korea is falling behind in tariff negotiation. Instead, I think there's going to be some time that needs where both countries, meaning the South Korea and the United States, are going to clear out these negotiations. Again, all of these things are negotiation frameworks, and the summit that's going to happen next week is going to be the pivotal point where we're going to get more clarity on these issues.
Right, and that could be a part of the reason why our foreign minister actually went to the U.S. Today. Now, just yesterday, reports said that the U.S. is considering taking equity stakes in chip makers, including Samsung, in return for CHIPS Act subsidies. Professor Kim, what kind of precedent does this set in government-corporate relations, and how might firms respond to that kind of condition?
So the intention is very similar to what Biden has set up as a CHIP Act. The intention is to have the U.S. control the semiconductor market, at least for the national interest of the United States. So that was the reason why Biden gave out subsidiaries to Korean semiconductor companies and also U.S. companies and Taiwanese companies to come to U.S. to build factories so that they can have the semiconductors supplied more stably. Semiconductors are very important. It's not only used for commercial use and industry use, but it's also used for defense use. If we do not have semiconductors, the core, weapon system of the United States do not function. So it's very important for the United States to have interest in the semiconductor industry. But yesterday's news was a little bit surprising because mostly Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, was suggesting that they would take 10% of Intel's shares for the 10.9 billion subsidiary the U.S. government has gave to Intel. The logic is that because U.S. government has provided subsidiaries to these semiconductor industries, the citizens of the United States should take dividends for the proceedings of the profits that these semiconductor companies make. Now they're requiring that to Samsung, SK Hynix, and TSMC. If you look at the subsidiary that was agreed to Samsung Electronics, it's about $4.7 billion US dollars. That would be equivalent to about 1.56% of Samsung Electronics' total share. Daily, the president has 1.65%, so that would be almost equivalent to Daly's shareholdings in Samsung Electronics. Although U.S. do not address intentions to have voting rights, and this, share will be a significant stake in the Korean companies and also to Taiwanese companies. But I think that's a little bit difficult for this agreement to proceed, because if you even look at Taiwan, TSMC cannot accept this agreement. Cannot accept this suggestion because the Taiwanese government will veto on this, and I think that our government will also have a strong veto on this. So this is the point that the Korean government and Korean companies should have a close alignment and cooperation to negotiate with the United States in these kind of a little bit odd offers.
Right, it was indeed surprising, and equity demands tied to subsidies could actually reset the rules for state market relations globally. Now let's go beyond tariffs. Washington is pushing Seoul to contribute more towards alliance modernization, from higher defense costs to expanded military roles. Professor Lee, what kind of spillover effect could this have on South Korea's economies?
Well, it could have first of all, the spillover effect to some of the deals that we're talking about so far. Professor Kim mentioned some of the takeover from the United States in terms of the ownership of the profits that are going to be made in the United States. Now, some of those talks will be affected by the national security purposes that you mentioned with the modernization of the alliances, especially the U.S. Army in Korea and also in the region. At the same time, it could also lead to some of the more investment pledges from South Korean firms as a result of this demand, where the U.S. is making more demand for this share of the Korean government in terms of the defense spending. And now here, the South Korean firms can also pledge more investment projects so that they can offset and balance out these issues. At the end of the day, I think the United States have a quite clear goal that the deal has to be made in terms of bringing more investment and manufacturing into the United States. And South Korea has the leverage in terms of bringing in more people as well as capital to the United States. So I think it's going to be a very interesting outcome where both countries, South Korea and US, are going to look at this and how to make it more of a comprehensive deal, including the economic security as well as the national security.
Right. It will be one of the main topics that we're going to look forward to during the dialogue between the two countries. Now, let's also turn to Japan. Its internal political turmoil is growing, with pressure on Prime Minister Ishiba to step down. Professor Kim, do you think this instability within could derail any real progress on economic cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo?
So Prime Minister Ishiba lost the House of Councillors election just recently. They could not acquire the majority of the House. So he's on really weak political grounds right now. And a lot of speculation is that he will sometime in the near future step down because of the political pressure. So the discussion that we make with Ishiba would be, I think, more on a symbolic discussion. We cannot really expect that the Ishba administration will stay for the majority of President Lee's administration and when he is in power. So we will have to make a symbolic discussion with Japan. And I don't think that Japan will be really part of this discussion during the summit because Ishba and Japan also needs a lot of cooperation from Korea and the surrounding countries to overcome the slow-growing economic situation and also the geopolitical situation that Japan is facing in the East Asian region. So the summit will be more symbolic and I think more a normative agreement. So and Korea will be more focusing on the U.S. summit rather than the Korea-Japan summit at this stage of the discussion.
Well, we also want to hear Professor Lee's opinion on that. South Korea and Japan still has a lot of historical dispute that has yet to be resolved. Do you think Seoul and Tokyo could realistically build deeper progress in terms of economic cooperation?
Yes, I think it's possible that the two countries can come together in this new era. If you recall, earlier this week is the anniversary of the trilateral summit between the United States, Japan, and Korea. And although the leaders of those three nations have changed since the last time the three countries met in Camp David, I think the spirit still remains, which is that Korea and Japan need each other in terms of economic security of moving forward, especially dealing with the United States. I think here, both countries, meaning Korea and Japan, are looking at this as more of a survivability of the nations and for the future prospect and outlook for the economic security. And that's because Korea and Japan are the most important trade partners and investment partners for the United States. So I think it's quite clear that the cooperations between the two countries are needed in order to make sure that they can navigate through this unprecedented time. Now, if you recall from the Liberation Day speech from President Lee, he made quite clear that there's going to be some discussions of the past and the future. And it's quite remarkable that Lee is visiting Japan this weekend and also visiting the United States the very following Monday. So this shows a strong collaborations between the two countries as well as the potential future for the three-country dialogue.
Right. So though there are still historical disputes left, it would be a crucial time for the two countries to cooperate, especially in the aftermath of President Trump's tariff policies. And we'll have to keep close tabs on that. But as for now, we'll have to conclude our discussion here. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Professor Lee.
Thank you.
And Professor Kim, we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
With her calm voice, anchor Bae Eun-ji delivers news you can trust. From